Hey guys, George with SoundTraxx here. Last week we talked a little bit about our dynamic digital exhaust and what it does for you. Now this week what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about how to enhance that dynamic digital exhaust and show you some of the other features that you have to control your exhaust using your diesel engine. So let's get started. Now, as I mentioned last week, we had talked about our dynamic digital exhaust and what this does with our diesel engines and our steam locomotive. Now, we use the diesel here in front of us for an example, but dynamic digital exhaust with our steam locomotive will increase the intensity and the tone of the exhaust chuff, again, based on the load on the motor. So when your locomotive is pulling upgrade, you're going to hear that chuff barking a lot louder than when you're coasting downgrade and when you hear that chuff back off. Now, in the case of a diesel locomotive, you'll actually hear the diesel engine get more intense as it also notches up to simulate the work the engineer would be doing. So to show you that right now as a recap, I'm going to go ahead and move forward at speed step 2. You're going to hear our diesel engine notch up nominally, but it's basically no weight behind it, so it's staying in idle. But now when we put some pressure behind it, you can hear that diesel engine notching up as it's working against my hand to pull forward. Now when I release, now you hear that diesel engine drop back down essentially to idle as it's coasting down the tracks. Now one of the advantages of the SoundTraxx Tsunami 2 and the Blue Nami is they have what's known as an auto and a manual control of the diesel exhaust. And what this does is this allows the decoder to have automatic control of the exhaust. So you can leave it based on load with the dynamic digital exhaust, or you can leave it at the default where you have the notching based on the commanded speed step. And then as you go through the speed, the diesel engine will notch up automatically. Now the other advantage is that you can also enable an automatic mode. And never once do we have to lock our throttle or our speed in order to be able to do this. So on the screen here, I'm going to go ahead and back this locomotive up. I'm going to go ahead and move forward at again about speed step 2. Now over here we have our functions to be able to pull out. And in the middle of this list, you'll see our RPM plus and minus. And this is what allows me to manually override. So let's say, for example, we're getting a train started and we're only in notch 2, but we feel like we should be up in notch 3 or 4, where you can simply increase the diesel engine RPM a couple of times, and you'll be able to hear that diesel engine notch up. And it also still has the dynamic exhaust as we're using with load. And then again, you have RPM minus. You can do the same thing where you can manually increase and decrease the diesel engine RPM. Not once have you ever had to lock your speed in, or have you ever left operations mode. We're still running our train. So when we bring it to a stop, you'll hear that diesel engine drop down to an idle, just like it would as if you were running the real locomotive. Now, one of the things you'll notice here on the Blue Nami screen, we're pushing essentially the function 5 and 6. And function 5 is the RPM plus and function 6 is the RPM minus. And what this actually is doing is it's telling the decoder to override. But here on the Blue Nami app, we can actually pull out this menu screen and you'll actually see these green buttons on the side, and this allows us to make these functions momentary. Now, when you're using the RPM plus and minus, you have to turn the function on for the function to take place, but then you have to turn it off again to be able to turn it back on. In other words, turn off the 5 to turn on the F5 again to notch up your diesel engine. Now the reason we've done that is because of the way DCC signals are sent. If your decoder loses power, that way you're not in a mismatch of how this setting is done. This way you always have control and you can know which notch you're in based on how many times you've turned on the function. But one of the advantages of Blue Nami is I can actually make this function momentary, which means the app actually automatically turns it off for you so that you don't have to remember how many times you pushed it. And these little green buttons here on the side allow us to make things momentary. So when the green button is turned on, that means that the function is latching, which means you turn it on and then have to turn it off again. When we turn that off, now the button becomes momentary. So now when I hit my RPM plus, you see that it increases and it'll sit there and run because it's automatically ready to go for the next time I'm ready to push it. Same with the RPM minus. I can actually push it down twice and shut the locomotive down. So this is just some of the ways that the SoundTraxx Tsunami 2 and the Blue Nami has the ability to give you an auto manual notching. Now, when it comes to our Econami, this does also have this auto manual notching feature that I'm showing you here. It just doesn't have the dynamic digital exhaust reactive based on load settings of the diesel engine or the steam engine. It is strictly a throttle-based change in intensity as you're increasing with the steam locomotive. Now, for more information on this and more of the other features of the Blue Nami and the Tsunami 2, be sure to check out our user's guides on our website at SoundTraxx.com. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video and click the bell so that you can be notified every time we have a new video. Guys, that's all I've got this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.